Let's get to this next game, Ryan. And this is going to be a very interesting game, in my opinion. We're going to stay out in the Pac-12. We're going to go number 11 Michigan State at Washington. Now, the first thing that we can both admit is we really don't know how good Washington is, because in the first two games, Washington has played Kent State, who's not good, and Portland State, who's not good. And they destroyed both of them. But here's what I do know. Kalen DeBoer is one of the better offensive minds in all of college football. He was that way all the way back to, where was he, like Sioux Falls, right? When he was dominating at Sioux Falls at NAIA as an offensive coordinator at every level he's been at. He did a great job at Indiana, and then he did a great job at Fresno. Took over at Fresno, turned them into a big-time program. And the thing about this matchup that I find really fascinating is Washington was such a horribly coached football team last year under Jimmy Lake. They were undisciplined. The coaches had no discipline. You got coaches striking players. They were in just silly penalties, missing on things. The issue at Washington, what I know it was not, was talent. They did not lack talent. They lacked coaching. And I think that this is a thing. This is where this game comes into play for me. So Michigan State is a good football team, and they're running the ball well. They've got one of the better running back depth charts in college football. Obviously, we know about Jalen Berger, who's had two good first games. But they also have Jarek Broussard, who was a really good runner at Colorado, has done some nice things in the first couple games as the number 2. And they have Elijah Collins, who's like 3 years ago rushed for almost 1,000 yards at Michigan State. Very good backfield, good running game. Peyton Thorne has not been sharp so far for me. They have one good receiver this year, where they had 2 last year. And so when I look at this matchup, I think that Michigan State should be able to move the ball on Washington. But what I don't think is, I don't think that Michigan State is going to be able to stop Washington. And this is really what it comes down to for me. So for my prediction, I'm going Washington 38 and Michigan State 33. And the reason I'm going with that is I do think Michigan State will be able to move the ball. I think they'll be able to run the ball. They'll get some big plays. But I don't think that Michigan State has a chance to stop the pass game at Washington. And I don't know what it is about Michael Penix and playing in this kind of offense. You know, we saw it in 2019, Kalen DeBoer's last year. We saw it in 2020, where there was still a lot of the Kalen DeBoer influence for him. And he had some really big numbers in the COVID year. And his numbers the first 2 weeks are tremendous. Now, again, I know the competition hasn't been that great. But here's what I like about it. Okay, number one, I love the system. I love Kalen DeBoer. He's been on my radar for years as an offensive coordinator. That's obviously out the window now because he's head coach. But as an offensive mind, he was a guy that was on my radar. Love what he does schematically. He knows how to get his teams ready to play. They execute at a high level. Ryan, you and I had the quarterback at Jake Hefner, right? I always get his last name. Hefner, excuse me. Hainer. There you go. We had him as in our top 15 quarterbacks this year, and a lot of it was just he was from Washington, and Kalen DeBoer did a great job coaching him up and getting him going. And we're seeing him continue to build on that success. And with Washington, they came out, and Michael Penix the first 2 games was on fire. But the other thing is, they didn't have Rome Odunze in the last game. He didn't play. And with him out, you know, it's like, okay, well, one of your better receivers. So Giles Jackson, a transfer from Michigan, steps in, and he goes for over 100 yards. You know, against Portland State again, but 6 catches for 105 yards. Well, you're going to get Rome back this week. I love Jalen McMillan. Everybody knows that I've loved him since high school. You're finally starting to see Jalen McMillan step out. Now that here's a crazy thought. Now that they're actually playing him and giving him a chance to play, and he has a quarterback that can actually complete passes, he looks like a star again. 9 catches, over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns in 2 games. So, and this is against a team that last year finished dead last in college football in pass defense. I don't think they've improved that much. They played 2 teams that can't throw the football. That's what I think from the first 2 weeks. Now, are they going to be better in pass defense this year? Yeah, I think so. But I think they're going to –
Can't get much worse.
No, literally can't get worse. Like, literally, there's no one beneath them last year. So I have a feeling that this is going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be a shootout from 2 contrasting styles of play. But I think Washington wins in the end, because I think they're Michael Penix, if he can stay healthy, that system with the talent they're going to have a receiver – They have 3 receivers on the team that have already basically had 100-yard games. Rome was like 6 yards underneath that in the opener. I think they're going to come out and roll offensively. Washington's defense is going to make enough stops to win the game in the end. Washington 38, Michigan State 33. Ryan Roberts, what say you?
So, I mean, we have a similar outlook in the sense that I also think Washington is going to win this football game. I picked a little bit of a lower score just because I think the Washington defense is very improved this year, Brian, and I agree. I think that there's going to be some success for Michael Penix and throwing to guys like Jalen McMillan and Giles Jackson and all those. They have a three-headed beast at receiver right now, so I can see them throwing the football around the yard a little bit. I just think the tempo of the game is going to be a little bit slower, just because I think that the Washington defense is going to kind of come to play a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit more ball control. But either way, I think that Washington's going to win out because I think that Michigan State is going in a good direction. I thought last year you saw a lot of great things from Mel Tucker. I'm just not convinced that there's stay power yet at that level, right? So I think they're going to take a slight step back, just naturally, right? There's going to be a slight regression. They're not going to be as good as they were last year. So I think that they're going to be a good football team, but I think Washington just has some good stuff going for them right now, man. And honestly, I just watched a little bit of their film on the coach's film. Yeah. I'll say this, Jalen McMillan's a dude. And I'll tell you who else is a dude. Braylon Trice, I think, is going to have a good football game on the defensive side of football, man. He played again, didn't play great teams yet. But
Ryan, they were not as bad as their record last year. Can we that was 2016 Notre Dame stuff, where they were 10-3 the year before, they went 10-3 the year after. It just was the perfect storm of bad coaching and stupidity and undiscipline all kind of came together with 4-8 last year, right? This is a team that the year before during the COVID year was 4-1, 3-1, right? Their only losses to Stanford. So you really don't know what they were that year. That was a mess of a year, and I think that hurt them as well. 2019, they were 8-5. They had a 1-point loss to Cal, 4-point loss to Oregon, 5-point loss to Utah, 6-point loss to Colorado, right? They're not a bad team. In 2018, they went 10-4. In 2017, they went 10-3. In 2016, they made the college football playoff and went 12-2. Last year was the anomaly. Yes. This team didn't all of a sudden not have talent. And I'm telling you right now, Terrell Bynum by the end of the season is going to greatly regret leaving Washington to go to USC. I get why he did it. I believe he left before Kalen DeBoer became the head coach. But he would be – could you imagine if Terrell Bynum was still there with Rome and Jalen McMillan and Giles Jackson in the slot, what kind of numbers this pass game would be putting up right now? So they didn't lose talent. It's like with Notre Dame in 2016. Oh, Notre Dame doesn't have players. They have the same players they had last year and the same players they have next year for the most part. I mean, you lost some guys, but you have other guys stepping up. It was never a talent thing. It was a poor coaching thing. And that's what I see from Washington. So, and I think if Michigan State wins this game, it is a huge statement that Mel Tucker has this thing completely turned around. I thought last year was a little bit of smoke and mirrors at times. The Big Ten was a little bit down. They kind of caught lightning in a bottle. Nobody thought Kenneth Walker was going to be what he was last year. No. I actually like the depth of their running backs better this year. Nobody's as good as Kenneth Walker is. Sure. But I talked about this when you had to step away, Ryan. When you look at the Jalen Berger, who's a good back. Jarek Broussard was a really good runner at Colorado before he came there. And then Elijah Collins was a borderline 1,000-yard back early in his career at Michigan State. It's a good backfield. It's just I think I think Washington is a top 25 caliber team. So even though they're unranked, I do think this is them going on the road and playing a top 25 caliber football team. And it's a tough ask to ask them to do that. But if they can keep it competitive, then that's a win for me. But if they go on the road and beat Washington, that's a big signal for Michigan State that they have truly turned a corner and put the couple bad years behind them.
I'll say this too. One last note about Washington, Brian, is that Michael Penix, when he doesn't have chaos around him, is a pretty good quarterback, man. Like that was the biggest thing at Indiana was the offensive line wasn't good and he would just get injured a ton, right? Because he was getting hit so much. Washington, even without Jackson Kirkland, who was their star left tackle, even though he did a terrible game against Michigan last year. He's been out this year, but they still have Rosengarten, I think is his last name. Yeah. Andrew Rosengarten, or Roger Rosengarten, I forget, but he's a good right tackle. Yeah. Number 73, he's a good football player. They have a number 55 that's filling in at left tackle for Kirkland. That's done a really nice job in pass protection. So as long as you keep
Kirkland's going to be back for this game either, from what I read. It's been about 24 hours since I did a check on that, but it sounded like he was probably going to be out again this game.
And even without him right now, they are protecting at a very high level. Again, not against a great team, but I also don't think I think Michigan State's got a couple pretty good interior rushers. Yeah. Like they have the Slade kid, and then they have the Barrow kid, who's a younger player, Simeon Barrow. But they don't really have any defensive ends that worry me a ton, right? So I think Washington's going to be able to protect the passer enough. and I think that they're going to eke out a victory. I had 24-21 in my prediction.
So you had what was your score?
24-21 Washington.
Okay. Yeah, you do have a lower scoring game. Some of the other scores that we had, Sean Davis predicted Washington to win 37-24. We were mixed on this one as well. Sean Stiers has Michigan State winning 34-28. Andrew McDonough has Washington winning 33-20. So we were all sort of in the same. Everyone believes it's going to be a competitive game. And the only thing that would surprise me, would not surprise me if Michigan State wins. The only thing that will surprise me is if one of the two teams got blown out. That would surprise me. I think this is going to be a good football game. And it might be one of the more entertaining football games of the weekend, if not the most entertaining game of the weekend.
I agree.
Because I think I love games with contrasting styles. And Michigan State will throw it. They're not like old school, like, Wisconsin, right? They run it, but they threw the ball well. I mean, everybody talked about Kenneth Walker last year, but their two receivers is what made the difference for them, because they could take the pressure off of Kenneth Walker. If you tried to load the box,
the Jalen's, man, Jalen Naylor and Jalen Reed. Yeah.
And I wish the other kid would have come back this year. I really wish he would have come back this year, because if he would have come back, because he had another year. If Naylor would have come back, boy, that with Keon Coleman, that group would have been really fun to watch. And my prediction might be a little bit different, but I haven't been in love with what I've seen from Peyton Thorne so far this year, to be honest with you, Ryan. Now, again, it's bad competition. Maybe he's not amped up for it, but I think that's one of the things that has me not super confident in this game, is because I think Washington, as you said, Washington has some good defense. I think they're going to be able to, if Michigan State can't hit some shots outside, they're going to be able to slow down the run game enough to give their offense a chance to win this one. So it'll be a fun game. It's going to be a fun game.
Agreed.